This is the Citrus Experience podcast, brought to you by Citrus Men. We're passionate about growing premium grafted citrus trees and helping you on your growing journey. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or an emerging green thumb, this series is for you. We share expert advice, insider knowledge and practical tips you can apply because we know and grow citrus.
Hello and welcome to the Citrus Men podcast. I'm Susan Burns.
And I'm Gary Isles.
And in this episode of the Citrus Experience, our aim is to help you recognise when your tree is a bit off colour, when it's a bit poorly and not improving, and really after this episode that you can understand the difference between a bit of wintry discolour and when your tree is actually in need of some serious focused attention. So Gary, I know what you're going to say to our citrusy listeners, and that's stay calm, but is that what you're going to say?
That's exactly what I'm going to say, yes. Don't panic. Citrus are a very resilient plant. If there's an issue, then generally it's a bit of normal, nice care that we've been speaking about in previous episodes. The tree will respond. There are a couple of things that are quite worrying, and we will talk about them shortly. But in general, don't panic. Yes. A yellow leaf is not the sign of a disaster. The tree will recover often on its own, but with a little bit of care, then you're off and away again. So yeah, we'll go through that, and we'll go through just a couple of the things that yes are quite devastating to your citrus tree, but we'll go through that shortly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So really, just to strongly emphasise, it's not a little problem. It's when you might buy a property or inherit a tree, or you've been away on a long holiday and something's gone really wrong and things are looking really sad. So let's kick off with dry trees. I know we've talked to Gary before about, the moisture levels in trees, but, gosh, I'm sure you've seen a lot of hanging in there dry trees. Like
and I've got to admit, Susan, that my trees that aren't in the production, they suffer because the trees that we're going to sell get looked after. My personal trees have to live a pretty tough life, and they survive. So dry trees.
Gary.
Exactly. Yes. The plumber's tap and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
With dry trees, as we've said before, dry trees we can recover much quicker than trees that are in having too much water, where the roots might start to disappear. Dry trees, they're generally, the roots are there. They're just looking for water, and when it really dries out, when we had a really dry period, then the tree, you'll see it in the tree that there'll be a bit of leaf drop in them, and the trees, the leaves will be all cupped up, trying to survive. But what I'd like to mention was going around with a garden hose and standing there for 2 minutes on the top of the root zone isn't going to crack it. What we call a deep water is what you need. So, and you might need to do that if the tree's really, really dry. You might need to do that a couple of times to get the moisture into the soil and for the soil to hold that moisture. But a deep water, give it time, give it gently, but let the water get deep into the root zone. Whether that's in the ground or even in a pot. Even in a pot sometimes, regular light water doesn't get down the profile. So you've got to get it so it's coming out the bottom of the pot. Not every water, but regularly, so that the whole root zone stays wet. Now, there's a very fine balance with containers. It's a fine balance between keeping that moisture level correct and getting it too wet at the bottom. So when I say deep water, you need a deep water, but not every time you water it. Just,
sure.
Every depending on the weather conditions too. So if it's hot and dry, then yes, you might need a good deep water once a week in your containers. But don't get it so that it's really, really wet in the bottom all the time. And the tree will tell you. You keep your eye on your tree. You'll see if the leaves are cupped up and
yes, and they sort of They
lose
lose
a bit
a
of
bit of their
gloss.
gloss, don't they? You can just, they
Yeah,
just look,
yeah,
I'm a bit unloved. And I
yeah.
think too, you touched on it before, Gary, but if it has been very dry, particularly the garden soil, that soil becomes hydrophobic. It resists water. You've really got to get moisture back into the soil, and as you say, that takes a lot. It might just be a gentle little sprinkler that you leave on there for some hours, but yeah.
Yeah, gentle sprinkler for a couple of hours will do it, and then you just keep it moist. Now, just referring back to previous episodes, we've talked about mulching. We've talked about using organic fertilizers. All those things help retain moisture, and that's part of the reasons we keep coming back to it, saying mulching with a sugarcane mulch or something along those lines is very beneficial. Plus the organic fertilizers, they help hold moisture. So all those things helping along.
Soil, improving that soil structure, which really helps. Yeah. But Gary, can they get so dry, so dry? Like they're like, are they dead? Are they alive? I mean, I often say scratch the bark of the trunk and see if there's green sap underneath, to see if there's chlorophyll still going up, or xylem or phloem or whatever it is.
Xylem up, phloem down.
That's right. Does it phloem?
They can, obviously any plant can get to the point where it's going to die because it's just hasn't got enough moisture. But gee whiz, they'll suffer a lot before they get to that point. And if it's got to the point where it's dropping leaves, then yes, have a look at, scratch a bit below the bark and see whether whether it's died back or not, and you'll soon see. It's very rare that they will completely die. I mean, but if it does happen if you're in a dry area and there's no water available, that can happen, but it's very uncommon.
And would you suggest
they're very resilient plant?
They are. But should you compensate, take a bit off the canopy if it's really struggling? Would you suggest that we reduce the load on the tree?
Yes. Well, now there's you can do a reduce the load by taking maybe a third off, but if it's really suffered for some reason, one way or another, then you can skeleton prune a citrus tree, which means you take it right back to the frame. So if you say a mature tree that's 2-3 meters or more, you can bring it back to a meter and a half and just have that basic frame, and it will come back from that. It's that's often used as a rejuvenation technique. So yes, they'll take a lot of punishment. But an old tree that's a bit scrappy, it's a great way to rejuvenate it. So bring it back to that basic frame. Now, sometimes in very hot, arid areas, then I have seen some whitewash used on the basic frame as a protectant from the sun. But if you're in a milder climate, I don't think it's necessary. But in a harsh desertish type climate where you might be getting mid-40s day after day, then you a bit of sun protection may be needed in that case. And there is another option. Yes.
What's that?
There is another option, and that is if you do want to rejuvenate your tree, but you don't want to lose that next year's crop, you can do half the tree 1 year, leave the other half so you get some fruiting. Because when you do a skeleton prune, then it'll just flush and it won't flower until the following season. So you lose it. It's putting that growth on. So you lose that upcoming crop. So an option is do half the tree and leave half the tree alone. Let the skeletonized side grow up, and then the next year take off the side you've left, and you won't miss your fruiting period.
Cool.
And you'll be less fruit, but it won't be as much. And you'll have a lovely rejuvenated tree in the end.
Right. So, but what would be the purpose of that, Gary, if you had a tree that was very poorly? You'd still have half a poorly tree, wouldn't you?
You would for that
Yeah, but
for that next season.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you'd have it for that next season. And when you do this, then you go back to the care things that we've spoken at previously about regular water, regular feed, mulching, those sorts of things, and the tree will take off. You'd be surprised the amount of growth that they come back with, because they've still got an established root zone.
Yes. 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 Look, I've seen it done, and I think this is a nice segue for us to sort of discuss now. If you are perhaps, well, not if the tree is poorly, but you might be wanting to move a tree, or you're I don't know why people do this. I think it's a bit funny that you would remove a tree from a house that you've sold, but some people feel that's okay. But if you want to take a tree out, or even in a really big pot, like people grow citrus in pots, that would be a good time to kind of skeletise your tree, wouldn't it? And then it's easier to transplant and move.
Yeah, less stress. Yeah. I mean, even it comes down to people renovating, and they've got a tree that's right where the renovation's going to go, or their pool or whatever.
Yes.
They might have a tree that's nicely established, that they like the fruit, so they'll move it, put it in another part of the yard. So yes, if you reduce that canopy, even back to what we're saying, to that real basic skeleton, take a nice bit of root zone, so the less disturbance to the roots, the better, and then move it. Then that's the trees. I've seen that work. I've seen that work quite nicely. Now, what I would say was, don't do it on a 45 degrees day.
No.
In the middle of summer.
No.
So plan it to do it, in the end of the winter, early spring would be fine. Autumn would be fine, but certainly not on a very hot period of the summer.
Yeah, for sure. But yes, look, I think citrus transplant really well. So very easy to move them. Well, not easy, but it's they move better than most things. Yeah, established trees. So yeah.
And another point would be, Susan, that we use. That's a good time to use some of the citrus booster that Citrus Men have.
Absolutely.
Just to, it's gentle. It has some NPK, and it's a good tonic for the plant. So that's just a nice time where you could treat the plant with some citrus booster, just to make it an easier move for the plant.
Yes, because it is a bit of a shock. It's a bit of a surprise, So
yeah, just a little. Yeah.
You've been discombobulated as a citrus tree. So anyway, yes, the citrus booster certainly is that reduces the shock, because sometimes the shock, if you haven't skeletized the tree enough, like they will drop leaves that they're trying to compensate themselves for the root damage. So citrus booster will help. Yeah, sure. So we have said this before, that things don't happen overnight on a citrus tree. It takes time, but sometimes things can happen overnight. When all of a sudden a citrus tree loses all its leaves. Have you seen that, Karen?
Yes, and I've had plenty of people contact me and say, yesterday my tree was fine, and today the leaves are all on the ground. And I say, okay, well, when did you feed it? And you can pretty well guarantee in the last few days they've fed it, and they've overfed it. And the theory, if they've gone in with a very easily available chemical fertilizer, that they've overdone it, then the tree will react very quickly and say, I don't like this, and the leaves will all end up on the ground. Doesn't mean the tree's going to die.
No.
I just generally say to people, give it a good water, don't feed it, just let it settle, give it a good deep water, flush that nutrient down away from the roots, and the tree will come back. But yeah, it can happen. It can happen.
Yeah. Okay. So, so don't panic, stay calm. Just do as Gary says. Serious pest incursion. What if you've got your tree's been attacked by something? Scale, caterpillars, borer.
Yeah, look, I think of the Yes, Susan, of those serious pest incursions, I'll talk about two first, and then the one that I really think's an issue. So we're talking about scale, and we're talking about gall wasp. So if we look at scale firstly, then it's all those little scales will be sucking the life out of the tree. And there's a number of different scales, white wax scale through to red scale. And so if you've just got one tree and there's a few scales on it, well, get the toothbrush, the hard brush out and have a bit, just push them off. Yes. If there's a bit more than that, then perhaps go along the lines. I don't want to go down the harsh chemical line. So I think we'd look at some of the petroleum oils, pest oils, those sorts of neem oils. They will generally do the job and help remove that infestation. So between a bit of oil treatment and a bit of brushing, if you've just got one tree, I think that will work quite well. Even if you've got a handful of trees in your backyard, you'll find that a little bit of treatment like that will help without having to go down into the harsher chemicals. So that's scales. Gall wasp. Again, gall wasp it multiplies. You'll see the galls. Need to get rid of those galls before the spring, before the end of August. We need to cut those galls out and let the tree come back, because once you get to the spring, they'll hatch and the galls will just multiply. So it's a little bit of watching and cutting it out.
Can I just jump in there, Gary, and just say often, again, it's probably more of a Victorian thing, but if you go into a property and they've got an older citrus tree, that they can be so gauly, so no one's ever done anything to those trees. So in that sort of a case, you would be saying just skeletize that, just remove all of it, or are you going to suggest this half and half pruning?
I think in that case you would just it's hard. In that case you would just go for it. Just skeletize it. Yeah, just skeletize it and then bin it. I mean, the days of backyards having an incinerator are now gone. So we can't do that. So yes, we just chop it up, put it in a garbage bag in your garbage can and in your waste and get rid of it before the galls hatch. But yes, in that case, don't do the half and half, because then it'll be infecting your new growths. So
yes, and again, we just need to emphasise to people that gall wasp is in that gall. So if you are disposing of it, you actually have to do something to kill out the little eggs or before they hatch out, because they'll still do that off the tree.
Yeah, if you just lay it on the ground, you'll still get your infestation. So you need to remove it. That's right. Yeah. So like you say, it's regional. In some regions you see it a lot. In other regions you hardly see any of it. And I think that's down to some natural predators that work in some climates and not in others, and that's something we'll talk about in the future.
Sure. Yes. So what's the one you think that we're not going to be able to pull the tree back from?
Yeah, the one that is really difficult is borers. If the tree's being attacked by borers, it's very difficult. Borers generally come if trees are under stress. It seems to be where they'll get into a tree when it's stressed. So they'll bore through the mature wood of the tree, so that it's very difficult to, even with chemical insecticides, to get them. I've told people, try and push a thin wire down the hole and try and get the borer, and that sometimes works. You can pour some chemical down there if you want to try and get it that way, but it's very difficult. They're so hidden within the plant. You might get one and there's another one somewhere else, and the tree's often very poorly anyway. it's a difficult. I don't have a silver bullet for borers, and sometimes it may be worthwhile saying, "Oh, the tree's got borer. Let's get rid of it and start afresh." See? I mean, you can persevere for a while and try those little things, removing the hole where the borer goes in, remove the sawdust and the waste, and try and expose it a bit. But I think it's a bit of a losing battle with the borer, I'm afraid.
And what would the tree? So apart from seeing perhaps some obvious entry holes in some dross or sawdust, what's the tree do? Just like looking sad? Are there any clear indicators that you've got borer other than visual?
Yeah, look, they're the indicators of what you just mentioned. Yeah, that's what you would see. But as I said, it's generally a tree that is poor anyway. Yeah. So it might have had, I don't know, it's been hit by the mower or something like that, and stressed the tree, or it's just not doing well for some reason, and the borers have attacked it. So borers are difficult. Yeah,
and look, I think plants generally are like that. They're like the weak antelope at the back of the pack. I mean, the lion is always the insect is always going to go for the weak tree or the weak antelope.
Certainly.
Another reason to keep your trees healthy. Okay. Well,
absolutely.
All right. Well, now you mentioned it, but what about? Whoops! I just ran over my citrus tree. Can you? We're all guilty of it, especially when we whippersnip around our trees.
Oh well, I think that's one of the big ones is whippersnipping around around your tree. We've all done it, and we've all said, "Okay, I'll just get close to the tree, but I won't touch it." The next minute, the strand of nylon is wrapped around the base of the tree. Now, if you ring-bark the tree, then you're in trouble. So, I think make sure that you mulch around the tree. We're harping on these same things all the time. Mulch around the tree. Don't mow or whippersnip right up to the edge of the tree. Put a mulch around the drip line, and then whippersnip or mow around the drip line of the tree. Don't get close to the trunk, because you guarantee that nylon cord will wrap around it. So if you take a little chunk out of it, yes, they will recover and after the callus over that wound in time. But once you start to go further than that, then you're cutting off the supply of nutrients to the top of the tree, and they don't like it.
Yes. Do you think it's a good idea to put a little bit of paint or paste, or grandfather used to use mud and hessian, but could you patch that up like a Band-Aid, or not worry about it? Just let the tree.
Look, if you did, I would leave it alone. If you took a chunk out of the side of the tree, but there's still, say, 2/3 or 3/4 uninjured, then I would just leave it alone and let the tree start to callus and repair it itself.
Yeah,
I think no need for intervention. Just keep it clear. If you've got mulch, just keep the mulch away from it a bit so it gets the air movement around it, and let it heal itself.
Yeah, look, that really is ideal. You don't want grass growing up to the trunk of your citrus tree. You do, as you say, that drip line. We've talked about it before. Is where the extension of the leaves go down. As if you draw an imaginary line. But it's beautiful to keep that weed-free, grass-free, pansy and viola-free. Just nice mulch. It's where you put all your fertilizer. It's where all the water goes in, and you can just whippersnip around the edges of that little grassy patch.
Yeah,
it looks posh. It looks posh.
It looks great. Yeah, and the tree's happy.
Yeah, tree's happy. Happy citrus. Happy everybody. Yeah. Well,
right.
What do you think? I think we've probably covered in everything, Gary. There's, look. People will know if they've got a serious problem with the tree, and really, in wrapping that up, it's really you've got clearly two ways you could go. If it's that bad, like borer, or you've ring-barked it, might be time to hop onto the Citrus Men and buy a new tree. Or cut your tree right back and let it start all over again, because they will do that happily and well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's right. They will take that heavy prune. I just mentioned before we sign off that, if there is a bit of dead wood in the tree and you just want to remove it, that's fine. Just remove the tree. If you want to prune the tree to a shape, that's fine. You can do all that without going to the heavy prune. We're talking about rejuvenating a tree that's poorly, and often that skeleton prune is the way to go.
Yeah, great. Well, gee, thank you. That was super interesting, as always, Gary. And thank you, lovely listeners, for joining us. And we suppose you'll all feel a bit more confident now about getting out with your secateurs and your pruning saws. So, yeah, it's good. So actually recognising when you have a real concern with your tree and not just a little variation in the season. So good on you. Thanks for sharing that lovely information. And in our next episode, we've sort of started talking about beasties and pesties there today. But we're going to talk about a few of our favourite insects, particularly predatory insects. So citrus insects to know and love we'll talk about next time, Gary. So
very good.
Thank you for a super interesting session, and I'll look forward to talking to you next time about the thing that we love the most, citrus.
Thanks for listening. For resources and contact details relevant to this episode, please see the show notes. Subscribe to Citrus Experience so you know when the next episode goes live, and follow Citrus Men on social media for more great content.